All right, so it's been quite an eventful weekend in the sport of mixed martial arts. So on Saturday night, we had a UFC fight night where Jose Aldo reminded us, because a lot of us forgot just how great he was, and always will be, kind of like Bret Hart. And I know I got that catchphrase wrong. Apologies up front, James. And then obviously we had Sergio Pettis produce a highlight reel finish against the one and only Kyoji Horiguchi. I want to not get that wrong, so let me read it. Kyoji Horiguchi, I got it right. In the Bellator event on Friday night. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what happened over the weekend. But before I do, my name's Rahul J. Chan. This is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. First and foremost, just quickly want to shout out Ryan O'Connor. Because Ryan, thank you for messaging me on Monday and telling me to make this video, because I struggle with motivation sometimes, man. Like, you sit here, you put some effort into, sharing your opinions, recording it, editing it, posting it, and you come back 2 or 3 days later and you've got 37 views, and it's a bit like, fucking hell, man, what a waste of time. But you gotta keep pushing through, innit? That's how you get more subscribers and all of that. But it's just nice to get a bit of encouragement along the way, so appreciate it. Thank you very much. But yeah, much like yourself, Ryan, I was kind of, I don't know what the right terminology is, but I was quite inspired by Jose Aldo. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't inspired to go and fucking sign up at my local gym and get hit in the face. Just inspired by the road that he's been on and the perseverance that he's shown, and the fact that he's still there doing what he loves at such a high level. I think going into the fight, the perception, well, my perception, I can't talk for everyone else on the planet, but my perception was that this is almost like the last kind of, the final test before Rob Font meets the big boss in a computer game. And in this kind of context, it will be, this is the final test that Rob Font gets before he's in the title shot conversation. So that means either he gets the next title shot, or he's definitely in a cemented #1 contender fight for the next title shot. Actually, let's go one step further. When Aldo dropped out of his fight against Peter Yan for the bantamweight title, Rob Font was contacted to be the replacement for the interim belt, but he couldn't make it happen because of just training and the timescales and all of that stuff, right? So he's definitely someone that's earned his way up the ladder to be in these conversations, and his performances have kind of reflected that of late, right? Because obviously his last fight was against Cody Garbrandt, where he absolutely schooled him, and that was back in May. But prior to that, Marlon Moraes, which was a spectacular knockout, Ricky Simon before that, and ironically Sergio Pettis prior to that, right? So he's been on a decent run. And personally speaking, going into the fight, I just assumed that this would be, I was very cognizant of how good Jose Aldo still is. But I just felt as though, because this is a 5-rounder, it might be difficult for Jose Aldo in the later rounds. Obviously, Jose Aldo won this fight comprehensively. I think he won every single round in 2 of the judges. Yeah, so 50-45 for 2 judges and 49-46 for 1 judge. Now, I don't know whether there was a 10-8 round in there as well. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't remember whether it was a 2nd round or the 3rd round where Jose Aldo just started pouring it on him, knocked him down, hurt him. And Jose Aldo turned in the kind of performance that is a what's the opposite of gentle? The opposite of a gentle reminder. That's what it was. Just reminding us that I'm still a very, very high level fighter. And I think, personally speaking, I'm very kind of careful about doing this, because I've caught myself doing this in the past. So I'm very kind of conscious of trying not to make this mistake moving forward. Is if a fighter has a bad performance, I try not to judge them just off of that one performance, or if they have a really good performance, I try not to think that this guy's the next best thing since sliced bread, right? Like, for example, when Conor McGregor lost to Dustin Poirier the first time, you had people totally losing their shit, losing their rag, telling us how Conor McGregor just doesn't have it anymore, and he's just not in the right headspace, he's not training the way he should be training. You had True Geordie going red in the face, filming a video much like I'm doing at the moment, telling us he's finished. No, Conor McGregor's finished. Like, and if you guys remember what I said in my kind of post-fight kind of video, I was just like, well, you know, it was just a bad day at the office. I don't really think he's finished. I'm pretty sure he's capable of coming back again. And when Jose Aldo had had a checkered kind of history over the last 3 or 4 years in terms of the results of his fights, a lot of people had written Jose Aldo off, and personally I hadn't written him off as a fighter. I just felt as though his ability to recapture a belt might not be at the required level, if that makes sense. And this win against Rob Font, it didn't surprise me by any means, right? I wasn't surprised, but again, at the same time, I don't want to be Captain Hindsight and pretend as though, oh yeah, I predicted this, because I didn't. I'll reiterate, I thought Rob Font is going to beat Jose Aldo, right? But while the fight was playing out the way it was, where Rob Font was trying to really push the pace and trying to outwork Jose Aldo and trying to not let Jose Aldo settle, and just trying to be the first one to the punch, literally, and just stifling Jose Aldo. And the way Jose Aldo was able to kind of weather the storms and come back and really crack Rob Font with powerful strikes and hurt Rob Font, that didn't surprise me, right? None of that surprised me. But at the same time, it was kind of like a pleasant reminder for me personally that why would I think that Jose Aldo doesn't have the skills why do I think he's in decline? Why do I think he's declined more than he has? I don't even know if he has actually declined, right? Maybe someone like Jack Slack, or someone that can really look at someone's technical capabilities in the octagon can answer that question. But for me personally, if I just kind of cast my mind back to when I first came across Jose Aldo, it was when he was fighting in WEC, and I remember kind of hearing about these leg kicks where he destroyed Uriah Faber's leg, and Uriah Faber was on crutches. I don't know whether Uriah Faber broke both his legs in that fight or what. I can't remember the context behind it, right? But I remember seeing these clips on YouTube when he beat Cub Swanson in the first round and knocked him out with a flying knee, and all of this stuff was back in 2009, right? But when he made his UFC debut, which was in when you fought Mark Hominick for the first in 2011. That can't be right. I'm sure he had a couple of fights before that in the UFC. But yeah, because I remember that fight so specific. So this is the point I'm trying to make, right? Because in the UK at that time, it was difficult to get WEC on TV, right? But when he fought Mark Hominick, according to this Wikipedia page, that was his UFC debut. But in my head, he had fought in the UFC a few times prior to that event in Toronto in the Rogers Centre, whatever it was called. And the reason why I'm saying all of this is he had this reputation, and he just had this air of invincibility. And the only thing that I can compare it to is John Jones when he was on his run, when he beat Rampage and he beat Rashad Evans and he beat Shogun for the belt to start with, and he beat Machida. And there was a period in John Jones's career at 205 pounds, if you can remember what I'm talking about, but there was that period where it just felt as though John Jones is going to win. It's just a question of how, right? And Jose Aldo had that, and Anderson Silva had that. Anderson Silva had that at 185 pounds when he was on his winning streak as champion. It was just like, how is anyone going to beat him? There's no way that, I can't even think of someone that he beat, but there's no way Fire Rex is going to beat him. Like, the point I'm trying to make is he was literally like, he just had this invisible armor of greatness and invincibility wrapped around him. And the fact that he lost to Conor McGregor, and then he had those 2 defeats to Max Holloway, and who else has he lost to? And then Volkanovski, and then actually he lost to Volkanovski, and then after that Volkanovski loss, he, just out of nowhere, I'm dropping down to bantamweight, by the way, guys. When there was so much talk, actually, when he was on this run at 145 pounds, at how difficult it is for him to make that weight at 145 pounds. And it just felt like the obvious step for him was to move up to 155 pounds. And for me, I felt as though when he decided that I'm going down to bantamweight, I felt like, when fighters get to a certain point of their career where they haven't quite hit the goal that they thought they were going to hit in terms of being a champion of their chosen weight class that they've been operating in for the majority of their career. So then they decide, actually, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna drop down, or I'm going to go up. Luke Rockhold, for example, Chris Weidman going up to 205 pounds. Who else? Cody Garbrandt, he's doing it. He's going down to 125 pounds. Who knows how he's going to look against Kai Karo France on whenever that is. I think that's this weekend, actually. The point I'm trying to make is when he made that move, when Jose Aldo made that move, I thought to myself, he's doing that thing that fighters do, where they can't quite admit that their skill level just isn't at the same level as the top guys in the sport currently, so they're blaming it on other things such as weight, etc. And he's come into this weight class and he's done well. And look, obviously he's lost to Peter Yan, and that fight was entertaining for the first 2 rounds or so. First 2.5 rounds, and then Peter Yan just took over. But the win against Marlon Vera, the win against Pedro Munoz, and then the win against Rob Font, I think it's just more of a case of, like, how Khabib recently was talking about how Jose Aldo should just retire, and Jose Aldo shouldn't be fighting anymore because he can never be champion again, and that should be the goal if you're a fighter. And it's all well and good saying that if you are good enough to achieve those goals, and clearly Jose Aldo was good enough because he was champion for a sustained period of time, right? But at the same time, like, those standards will effectively, or that way of looking at things would effectively rule out 85-90% of the fighters that do this sport professionally. And there's a lot of people in Khabib's team that have fought professionally and do fight professionally that don't really have any chance of being champion themselves. At least Jose Aldo achieved that goal. He attained that level of greatness, right? But Jose Aldo is still operating at such a high level. And it's weird, right? Because, when someone is actually achieves something so great in the sport, as Jose Aldo has done, us as fans turn around and start saying, oh, no, he just doesn't have it anymore. He should retire. Like, we just make this kind of blanket assessment that this guy shouldn't be doing what he loves anymore because in our minds he's not as good or as great as he once was, right? And it might even be true because, again, sat here, I don't know whether he does have what he needs to be a to beat a Peter Yan. To be fair, I wouldn't be. I don't know whether he'd be able to beat a TJ Dillashaw. Corey Sandhagen would be interesting. Aldo would be interesting, but I don't know whether Jose Aldo has what he needs to be champion again. But he's been fighting in this sport, and he's come across. He's been fighting amongst 3 generations of fighters, and he's still fighting at a very, very, very high level, and he needs his flowers for that. And actually, I'm glad that from what I've seen from the MMA media covering the sport, that's what he's got. He's got the respect that he deserves because of his performance over the weekend, and he's got the love that he deserves and the adulation around his, like, it's caused people to look back at his career and reassess how we perceive him as a fighter, myself included. So yeah, it's nice to see, man. I love these kind of stories in combat sports, because it's too often when a fighter becomes a champion and then loses the belt, and then they go on this kind of spiraling journey that has the odd peak here and there, but then there's another trough, and you get to a point where you have people sat there online telling you that you're shit and you shouldn't be doing this anymore. Stop fighting, retire already. And I don't know, man. Maybe it's the fact that I'm an Arsenal fan, right? And the way we've been playing recently, I go on social media and all I see is just people reacting with like this visceral kind of sense of hate and emotion about one bad result. And admittedly, we've had more than one bad result this season. Like, I was supposed to record this video yesterday, Monday night, after the football, but the way I felt after we lost to Everton, I just couldn't sit here and talk crap in front of a camera, because I was genuinely upset. Like, Arsenal genuinely has an effect on my mental health. But just seeing how people react, the same people that were telling us that Arteta is Arteta ball, he's finally doing it, he's turned us around, we're going to be top 4 this season. And then it's the same people tweeting about Arteta out. I never believed in him. What is his philosophy? Blah, blah, blah. People just, like, it's almost like like, it doesn't even register to them that I'm completely contradicting what I was saying 2 weeks ago. And that kind of mentality exists in sport, man. It just exists in sport. And I have been guilty of it in the past, and I genuinely do try and make a conscious effort of not being that guy anymore. But it's just nice to see. It's just nice to see the respect that someone of Jose Aldo's stature is getting now after this big win. To be frank, big win. I don't mean to go on for so long about this, but you can see, obviously, it just had a nice, it's a nice feel-good story. A nice feel-good story for the weekend. Another nice feel-good story for the weekend, for Sergio Pettis, that is. He defeated Kyoji Horiguchi at Bellator 272 via spinning back fist. So Sergio Pettis was getting dominated by Horiguchi. And actually, let me take a step back, because Horiguchi was a new signing by Bellator. And he is, amongst the MMA hipsters, a highly rated bantamweight, someone where they say he genuinely is a top 5 pound for pound bantamweight in the world. He obviously previously was fighting in the UFC. The only defeat he had in the UFC was against a certain Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. He left the UFC and went to Ryzen. I think he's had one defeat in Ryzen, which he immediately rectified in a rematch by knocking the guy out, Kai Asakura. But he entered Bellator with a 29-3 record, right? And fighting against Sergio Pettis on Friday night, watching that fight, I hadn't seen Horiguchi fight for years, right, since his UFC days. But the way he was dominating, I don't know if dominating is the right word, the way he was beating Sergio Pettis in that fight, people were saying that he had won every single round until he got knocked out. I don't know. I didn't, to be honest with you. I watched it during the day yesterday. I had half an hour on my laptop because I was, working, but I had it on in the background. And from what I saw, I could definitely concur with the fact that Horiguchi was winning the fight. I don't know whether it was so clear that he won the first round, but I didn't really watch it intently. I did take my eye off the ball a couple of times. But the point I'm trying to make is I could see why he was as highly rated as people were telling us he is. Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell on the Morning Combat Show were telling us when he signed to Bellator, oh, this guy, he'll be a very difficult test for Sergio Pettis. He's a very, 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 very good martial artist. And they were excited about the fact that Bellator had signed him, right? So the way he was fighting that fight, it looked as though Sergio Pettis was just not going to find that next gear to overcome Horiguchi. But also, it didn't look as though he was going to be able to knock Horiguchi out, because just how clinical Horiguchi was with his striking and the way he was able to level change so quickly and secure takedowns or push Sergio Pettis up against the fence, and then, just basically he was dominating him in certain kind of transitions in the fight, right? And then out of nowhere, Sergio Pettis throws this high kick and he follows it up with a spinning back fist, which connects and it knocks Horiguchi clean out. Now, like I think I said at the start of this video, I can't remember if I did say it or not, to be honest, but that's the kind of finish that you usually associate with Sergio Pettis' brother. And I feel like it's a nice moment, because even though Sergio Pettis won the bantamweight title, the Bellator bantamweight title against, I always forget this guy's name. What is his name? Oh, Juan Archuleta. He beat Juan Archuleta back in May. It felt as though he's always kind of just, even then, to me personally, he was a little bit kind of in his brother's shadows, right? Wrestling with shadows. But yeah, doing the way he won that fight, obviously it was nice for him to have a highlight reel moment, right? Because he's had big wins, but when he's had big wins, they've been kind of decisions and things of that nature, as was his victory over Juan Archuleta. So I liked the fact that he was able to secure this big win, and the way he sat on that fence of the cage and he was like, what time is it? It's my motherfucking time. And I thought, yeah, it is your time, Sergio. Well done. Fair play to you, mate. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you to get that big moment, and, loads of different people were posting it on social media and talking about it, etc., etc. So yeah, I was glad to see that. Commiserations to Horiguchi, because he was winning the fight. But I suppose that's why we love the sport. That's why we love the sport, because anything can happen at the drop of a hat within a split of a second. And Kyoji Horiguchi learnt that the hard way on Friday night, unfortunately for him. Now, please comment this below, right? If you've got this far in the video, that is. Please do comment. Do you give a shit about a bantamweight tournament? Because I don't. Like, I feel disconnected from Bellator, and I've been saying this for a good year or so. Like, I don't really feel any excitement for Bellator, because they keep in divisions where they can, I feel like, where they can have, real kind of inject some energy into a division and have some kind of excitement and storylines, etc., etc. They keep having these tournaments, Grand Prix, that they call it, and I struggle to give a shit. I genuinely struggle to give a shit about these tournaments that they keep putting together. And I don't know why it's so necessary that for them to do that. Like, I don't know why they can't just say, all right, look, let's just put this guy in with this guy. Let's put Sergio Pettis in with the guy that has the biggest. Like, now, they would be well within their rights to book a rematch between Sergio Pettis and Horiguchi after how that played out. But now there's going to be this tournament. Who knows what bracket who's going to be in? It's going to drag out for a year and a half. And then eventually we're going to have the winner get crowned. No one's really going to care. I just wish they'd stop. Will you stop, Ryan? Stop, Ryan. But I struggled to get excited about these Grand Prix, man. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I plan on doing this more often, rather than, like, I mentioned, like, I struggle to just keep engaged with doing all of this stuff, YouTube and whatnot, and keep making content. So I think I'm gonna change my approach, and rather than just making videos when I feel like it, which leads me to become lazy and not feeling like making a video, which is why I don't make videos for weeks on end. I feel like I'm going to start just doing Tuesdays and Thursdays. If I say on Tuesday I'm making a video and on Thursday I'm making a video, whatever the topic is, however long or short the video might be, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what my plan is. Now, I'm not making excuses and I'm not already backing out of this plan, but obviously we are approaching a festive period, so it might be difficult as this year comes to an end. But definitely from January, I think that's the new game plan. Twice a week, on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And then if something is proper, like, breaking news that makes you go like, wow, can't believe that happened, then I can just make a video as and when, breaking news sort of thing. But yeah, that's my plan. Let me know what you guys think about the stuff that I've been banging on about for the last half hour or so. Apologies, this took way longer than I anticipated it would. But just had a few things to get off my chest, because today I got time. Yeah, let me know what you guys think about anything that I've said. Please feel free to share your own original opinions in the comments below about the topics that I've been discussing. And like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that good shit. I will catch you guys next time.